Okay. All right, beautiful. Welcome, folks. As the summer marches on, so does the Torah portion of the week after week, as we share together. Baruch Hashem. Okay. This week's Parshah Eikev. Eikev means because. You know why it means because? Just because. I mean, just because. That Eikev Tishma'un, because we will listen. And what will we listen to? The word Eikev means because, but it also means heal. When we listen to those things that, like the heel that we step on, that we don't pay that much attention to. But when those things that we need to pay attention to, that might be minor in our eyes, but perhaps major, just because in our eyes are minor, they still might be major. God's eyes and someone else's eyes may be very important. Hence, we need to be careful even with the small things. And you know why? Just because. Just because. And Parsha then continues. And let us share here together the screen. There we go. So then it continues, and the verse says, Kol ha-mitzvah asher anechi mitzavcha hayom tishme'un lasois. Observe and fulfill all of the mitzvah that I command you on this day, so that you may live, multiply, and arrive in Israel, where you will possess the land that God swore to your forefathers. So let's take a look in the Hebrew over here, because it's important, the nuance in the words. Kol ha-mitzvah. That means all of the command. Not all of the commandments, but all of the command singular. As opposed to kol ha-mitzvot or mitzvahs, which would be all of the commandments, plural. So if there was a vav, and instead of the hey here, it would be a taf or a saf, then it would be in the plural, all of the mitzvahs or mitzvot that I command you today. So obviously this is a question. Why? Why would the verse, when it's speaking about all and not something specific, one mitzvah, write it in the singular form, all of the mitzvah? Is it referring to something specific, a specific mitzvah, and still calling it all? Or does it mean all the mitzvahs? What does it mean exactly? Question is clear? So the Ibn Ezra, or sorry, the Mizrahi, Eliyahu Mizrahi, so he explains that the word mitzvah connotes the category of mitzvah. It is like saying all the mitzvahs. So he says sometimes, the Torah is speaking in the singular form, but it really means the plural, right? So in a way, it's like, God gave us a mitzvah at Matan Torah. Really, he gave us all the mitzvahs of Matan Torah. Okay, so he's saying that that's what it could mean. Fine. But if that's the case, why didn't God write that in the Torah in that manner? Why confuse us with the singular syntax of mitzvah when, so to speak, for the same money, you could have said mitzvahs in the plural, and we'd have it clear. It wouldn't be a problem. So the Abarbanel, another commentator who lived in times of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492, he's one of the leaders of the Jewish people. He was actually a minister in Ferdinand and Isabel's government, but would not convert, and therefore, with the Jews, he was expelled from Spain. So he says there's a very important lesson that we learn from this. Barbanel explains in text number 3 before you, it is well known among the wise that when something is complete, it is viewed as a single entity despite its many components. Therefore, the word one and the word complete are used almost interchangeably. This applies to God's Torah as well. Mitzvahs in the aggregate are one complete concept. Accordingly, our Master Moshe sometimes refers to the commandments as mitzvahs in the plural, for they are many, and sometimes in the singular, for they are singular and unified, as he, God, who commanded them. So this is a very deep and profound insight, right? What's the insight over here? That mitzvahs should be seen in a totality. They shouldn't be seen as piecemeal, a one here, a one there, right? We accept this one, we reject that one, but we should see mitzvahs in their whole oneness. And when we reject this, accept that, then what we're doing is not taking it as an aggregate oneness, a wholeness. We're taking it as piecemeal, and it's not complete. So therefore, if we want to have the oneness of God, we have to have that through the oneness of his Torah and mitzvahs. So when we see the oneness in it, even though there's, in a sense, plurality because there are many different mitzvahs, but if we see it as a one aggregate whole, then that will give us a oneness in our connection to God Almighty. Is that clear? Make sense? Beautiful. So that gives us a little, understanding, a little more depth in why now there is a singular form of mitzvahs when we're speaking about all of them, because all of them are this one wholeness. But how do we understand this in the context of what's going on over here? Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to the Jewish people, right? He's telling them, do all the mitzvahs. Well, not all the mitzvahs could they do at that time. They weren't in the land of Israel yet. And we know that the 5th book, Moshe is exhorting the Jewish people that they should observe all the mitzvahs. But all the mitzvahs, they weren't capable of fulfilling all of them. So why would he, exhort them of something that they couldn't fulfill? They couldn't fulfill the mitzvahs yet of the land of Israel until they come into the land. So Rashi gives an explanation that is somewhat out of the box, something different, unusual, perhaps something we wouldn't normally think of in Rashi's lexicon, because it just doesn't seem to be the simple meaning, so simple at least. Let us see what Rashi has and provides for us. Rashi, on this verse, he says a medrash explanation. If you begin a mitzvah, complete it. For a mitzvah is only attributed to the one who completes it. So first of all, let's understand this explanation on our verse over here, that Rashi neatly sidesteps all of the issues, all of the problems that we have. We had an issue, why wasn't Moshe referring to all the mitzvahs in the plural? Well, he's not talking about the plurality of mitzvahs. Is he speaking about a particular mitzvah? We asked the question because it's in the singular form. And the answer, according to this, he's not speaking about a particular mitzvah. Actually, he's speaking about any mitzvah. What is the point of the verse? That any mitzvah that you might do it all the way. You start it, complete it. Don't stop midway. It will not be attributed to you. In other words, you don't get the credit, the merit, as the one who completes it. So this answers what he's saying in the verse. Let's go back to the verse. Observe and fulfill all of the mitzvah, one mitzvah, any mitzvah, whatever mitzvah it is. You started it, you're in the middle of it, fulfill all of it that I command you on this day. Don't be partial in your fulfillment. You started, maybe you got a little, lazy down the road. No. You start, finish it. Don't go midway. Now, although it seems to fit with the words, kol ha-mitzvah asher neichi, the entirety of the mitzvah, but that's only when we're looking, when you look at the words, all of the mitzvah, we wouldn't think it in these terms. It's not the literal way we would read this. So we need some context in order to appreciate why this is indeed the explanation that Rashi is giving. So let's remember, Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to this generation. It's a new generation. The past generation passed away. This is the new generation that's going to go into Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu wants to make certain. He knows he's not going to be taking them into Eretz Yisrael. He's got to do everything he can to empower them, to give them the strength, the inner strength, the fortitude, that they shouldn't make the mistakes that their parents made. What was the mistake their parents made? Well, they get the Torah, and 40 days later, they sin. The entire nation sins with the golden calf. That's not bad enough. Sometime later, they all sin with the sin of the spies, that they all lack their faith in God. So he wants to make certain, don't make that mistake. Your parents started the journey. They were the ones who were commanded at Mount Sinai with the commandments. But they're not bringing it into Israel. They're not going to make it complete and full because they blew it. So you might get tempted. Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to this new generation, that you might get tempted to turn against God, have a lack of faith, and not complete the mission. He says, I beg you, stay the course. You're going into land, stay the course. Where would Rashi get this idea from? Rashi doesn't, doesn't make up his own ideas, of course. This is an idea that has to be already embedded in the Torah itself, right? In other words, we see how you can read it into the words, But the Mizrahi learned differently. The Barbanel learned differently. Where does Rashi get this idea that if you start something, you should finish it? That this should be the explanation over here. Now, again, we have the context of it, and we have how the words now fit with this explanation. But there still has to be a precedent for this idea. Is that clear? So let's continue with Rashi as he explains. Rashi says, "For it is written, the remains of Joseph that the children of Israel had brought up from Egypt, they were buried in Shechem," as it says in Joshua. But didn't Moshe transport Joseph's remains from Egypt? Yes. But because he did not complete the burial, and the Jews did, the entire project is attributed to the Jewish people and not to Moshe. So I'm sure we're aware of the story, right? Before Yosef passes away, he makes his brothers promise that they would make sure that the future generations would be aware that upon redemption of the Jewish people, because that was clear, that was already, which was, by the way, his passing until our redemption from Egypt, 139 years. It's a long time. But it would for certain happen. So make known to the people that my bones should be exhumed and be brought to the Holy Land. So when the Jewish people were busy borrowing things or getting what was, their due for 86 years of harsh labor, getting the gold and silver before they left Egypt, Moshe Rabbeinu himself went to the sea where he was buried and to exhume his coffin and to bring him with the Jewish people. Not only did he bring him with the Jewish people, but he took care of Yosef for 40 years. So much so that others wanted to take care, but he said, no, the holy righteous person, Yosef, I will take charge and I will make certain that he is taken care of. But does he take care of him completely? No, because in the end, he couldn't bury him. Not because he's negligent, but because God didn't allow him into the Holy Land of Israel. Who completes it is the Jewish people. So what emerges from this? Two critical, important points. One is that if you begin a mitzvah, please complete it. You have a sacred obligation to complete it. And if someone else does complete it, it's attributed to that person. Is that clear? So this is where Rashi gets his understanding of this concept previously, and therefore quotes it. And this is what he gives us as an understanding of this particular verse. Any questions? We're good?
So we're staying the course.
We're staying the course, exactly. Exactly.
But others have started.
Exactly. Now, let's look somewhere else in Jewish history where it wasn't that way as we just described. And where is that? With King David and the establishment of Jerusalem as its capital, the capital of Israel, eternal capital, and the building of the ultimate home of God, the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple. Now, as we know, God didn't allow King David to actually build the Holy Temple because his hands were bloodied in battle. Even though he did what was righteous, bloodied not not as a negative, not as a negative thing that he did, a very necessary thing that he did, right? Yet the Holy Temple that is meant to bring peace had to be done ultimately by his son Shlomo. So strong was the desire of King David to build the Holy Temple that he made all the preparations. He purchased Temple Mount. He prepared all the raw materials, did everything that was necessary except for completing the job, doing the actual job of building. That was done by King Solomon. So yes, he got the ball rolling, but he didn't bring it over the finish line. Yet, the Mechilta, the Medrash, says that an interesting thing, that who do we call this? The Psalm of David. It was dedicated to the house of David. Why is the temple attributed to David? Did David build it? Solomon built it. As the passage states, and Solomon built the house. Rather, because David was deeply committed to the building of the temple, it is attributed to him. Okay. Well, how does this jive with Moshe Rabbeinu? If there's someone who is called Mr. Dedication, it's Moshe Rabbeinu. So dedicated is to the Jewish people that he's ready to allow his name to be erased from the Torah because he's so dedicated to the Jewish people. So dedicated to the Jewish people, I'm sure he's dedicated to Yosef HaTzadik and his place to be buried in the Holy Land, and involves himself personally, exhuming the coffin, taking care of him for the 40 years in the desert. And yet, in this instance, it's not called after his involvement. I'm sure he was no less exuberant and devoted to Yosef HaTzadik. So how do we understand this? Question clear? We're good? All right. Thumbs up. Joel? Andrew? David? Thumbs up. You get it? Questions clear? All right. Celia? All right. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. So we're going to segue for a moment and to appreciate Jewish law. How Jewish law, of course, is not, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's based on principles, moral and ethical principles. And let's understand that. So, question. If Reuven wants to sell his home, Shimon is a real estate agent. He informs Reuven that Levi is in the market for a home. Reuven tells Shimon he doesn't want to sell to Levi. Later, Reuven approaches Levi directly and sells him the home privately. Is Shimon entitled to a commission? Anybody? Is he entitled?
I guess yes.
You would say yes, right. Why?
He made it known that
He
there
would.
was interest.
He wouldn't have known that Levi was interested if it wasn't for Shimon telling him. Right? Good. Now let's add to the story. What if Reuven hired his friend Chaim, who's also a real estate agent, and he would close the deal with Levi? And Reuven paid Chaim full commission. So it's not like he, in the first case, maybe he was trying to cheat out the commission. Here he's paying full commission, but it's to Chaim and not Shimon. And rightly so, maybe, because Chaim is his guy who he deals with. So would Shimon be allowed to get any part of the commission? Yes or no?
Yes.
Why?
For the part that he played in making it known and setting it in play.
Okay. Anybody want to argue? Anybody want to agree? Anybody doesn't have an opinion? So let's see what the Ramah Islis in Halacha says in this particular instance. So Ramah says, Reuven had a house to sell, and Shimon, an agent, proposed to sell it to Levi. Reuven replied that he doesn't get along with Levi and doesn't want to sell to him. Reuven then sold the house to Levi through a different agent. Reuven must pay Shimon a commission. Now, you can maybe ask a question. Why is he entitled? And this is important. Why should it be entitled if we are saying here that you go according to the one who finishes? Whoever starts and doesn't finish, it's going according to the person that finishes it, right? They get the merit, they get the credit. Well, he didn't finish it. So why is he getting any credit? Anybody?
Don't know.
Well, simply because he did have a hand in there. Because of him, he knows that Levi was interested. So therefore, even though he didn't finish the proposition, but yet he had a hand in making the proposition work. Now, it's interesting that commentators don't say how much of a portion he should get. And it's mainly the Ramah doesn't say how much. Doesn't say, he says he gets something, he doesn't say how much. So how much should that person get? What is their due? After all, they did bring up the name of Levi, and perhaps the only reason it was sold to Levi in the end, even though by a different real estate agent, is because I made you aware of the fact that there's a Levi that's interested. So for this, let's now have a parallel halachic question about matchmaking. Sure, you all saw the movie, Matchmaker, Make Me a Match, right? Yesterday was the day of matchmaking, Tu B'Av. The 15th of Av was the day of matchmaking. I spoke about that at great length yesterday. So let's understand. Matchmaking is an integral part of Jewish life, and I suggested it should be part of not just the religious community, but anybody that's interested in getting married. Matchmaker, make me a match. I strongly suggest that this is the way we should go. It is a healthy way. The riffraff, you don't have to deal with people who are not appropriate for you. You get through them before you have to go out with them and figure out if, and before you go out, like often our children would say, when they're going out, all they're trying to go out and find out is what we know, and what's written on paper actually is in real life. Right. So it's an amazing thing, the concept of a matchmaker. Now, a matchmaker, even though they get credit in heaven, but they also get a fee for doing the match. So what happens if you got a name of somebody from a matchmaker, but you, like us, Simcha and I, we have our matchmaker. We have the person that we like to use because we feel that she knows us. She knows our kids. At least, she knows some of the kids, some kids better, some kids not as well, but she's, and she's very intuitive and sensitive. She's great. So if someone else brings up a name, often we'll bring it up to our matchmaker. It's not uncommon. You can even have 3 or 4 matchmakers involved. You can have someone who was the initial person who had suggested the idea. Can be someone else maybe that you did some kind of research with, that they helped you. And then it could be finally the person who's, sees it to the end. Right? So who gets paid? Right? Besides heaven and down here on earth. Down here on earth. So the consensus among halachic authorities is that the fee should be shared. What are the specifics in that? A lot of it's determined on local custom. So some communities will be divided equally between the matchmakers. Others, it might be the first person who made the suggestion and the last one who saw it through, who closed the deal. Others in communities would be the one who closed the deal, who was the one who saw it through, would get 2/3 of the fee, and the others would split the third that was the remainder. There, distinction. But it's reasonable to pay the first agent a finder's fee. Right? So, but remember, Jewish law, and this is Jewish law. We're talking about Jewish law now, right? We're talking about Jewish law. I'm not talking about niceties. In other words, it's nice that you should pay the person. Fine, we're not talking about that. We're talking now, if it comes to Jewish law, that there's an opinion about this. So again, Jewish law is based on principles. It's not based on niceties. So if we have a principle here of the one who saw it through, it's called on their name, right? That clear? They get the merit. Then why would the person who just suggested at the beginning be able to get a share of the matchmaking money? How do we understand it? They didn't complete it. So why would the first matchmaker be entitled to anything? What is the principle, in other words, that would entitle them? We have a principle of that the mitzvah is called on the name of the person who finishes it. That's how we started off this week's Parsha. Moshe is exhorting the Jewish people. Your parents aren't finishing the job. They blew it. Don't blow it. Kol ha-mitzvah, do the entirety of the mitzvah from beginning to end. You're now the ones who are going to begin to go into the land. Don't get frightened. Don't get sidetracked by other things that might be tempting in the land of Israel. See it through. So that's a principle in Jewish law. So what's the principle over here? And we have the same question when it comes to Moshe versus King David. We see with Moshe, he's not credited. but King David is. Where does this concept come from? How do we understand this? Well, let's go back to matchmaking. And there was a dispute in the 17th century amongst two matchmakers in Germany. One proposed the match, the family declined, and the other who proposed the same match, and not only was it accepted, but it was successful, and the couple got married. So the first one is, hey, I'm the first one to propose it. So do they get their due or not? What do you think? Anybody? Can we see more cameras over here? Anybody? More cameras? More seeing people? It's wonderful to see people. Oh.
Sometimes, like who it comes from, like you said, if it comes from someone that you trust, it has a lot more, it's like, oh, okay, well, if they think that, then maybe there's something really is there, and that starts the ball rolling, rather than just the message coming from anyone that doesn't have that kind of standing.
Okay.
It doesn't answer your question, but
I know you said something starting the ball rolling. Let's go from there. Okay, so let's share. So this is from Jacob Poppers, Shav Yaakov. He says, it seems to me, as I have ruled on many occasions, that if the initiator failed to secure the deal, right, that's the first matchmaker, and the other matchmaker secured it, he is entitled to a finder's fee. Here's a principle. Getting the ball rolling, as you mentioned, Ahuba, it's called a finder's fee, right? But he says that's only if the others did not conceive of the match on their own. In that case, because the initiator contributed to the idea, he's entitled to a fee in accordance with local custom. Okay, how much, that's a different story. But in other words, there's a new principle that we're speaking about over here, and that's called the finder's fee, right? As a matchmaker, I brought you the idea. You would never thought of the idea. You, because of that, are obliged to compensate, right? Though he failed to complete the deal. There's another principle, completing the deal, right? Seeing it through. Kol ha-mitzvah, that's what our Parsha is speaking about, right? But we have another principle here. The initiator who's contributing, that's called, deserves a finder's fee. However, the caveat over here, if the subsequent matchmakers thought of the match on their own and were unaware of the first matchmaker had thought of it previously, the first matchmaker did not contribute anything to the match. Had they not come along, his initiative would have been forgotten. Therefore, I see no reason for him to collect a fee. Oh. So what comes out of this? Not all initiators, people get the ball rolling, are equal. There's an initiator that if the initiator hadn't initiated, what would have happened? Nothing. Nothing. You didn't know about Levi that he wanted to buy your property. You wouldn't have known if I didn't tell you. So there's a person who got it, the ball rolling, and their initiation, or in a shidduch, you didn't know about this girl or the guy. But there's another kind of initiation. You initiated it, but it didn't really get the ball rolling because the ball got rolling, on the other lane, just the same. So even though you got the ball rolling, but it didn't lead to anything, it didn't finish to anything. And therefore, since in any case, it came up from someone else totally on their own, hey, after all, you know why it worked? Because And when two people think about it, obviously there must be that there's a better chance, each one is thinking that it's the right thing, right? That's why they brought it up. So the fact that it was brought up by another, again, and obviously that's all has to do with honesty, right? Yeah, because you're not fooling anybody, you're not fooling God. You might fool a person and you might not get their due, but that's dishonest. We're talking about in honesty over here. Then that person doesn't get anything because they didn't see it through. And they didn't even really get the ball rolling. Now we can understand something. Precisely this is the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and King David. What's the difference? Let's start with King David. King David gave his life over for Yerushalayim, to conquer it, to buy Temple Mount, to get the architecture done, the raw materials ready, everything that was necessary. He gave his heart and soul. If he wouldn't have done what he had done, would King Solomon have done it? Not necessarily. Not at all. Possibly. It's only because of the initiative. He got the ball rolling. Not only got the ball rolling, but if he didn't get the ball rolling, unlikely that King Solomon would have thought of it and would have done it. So since he not only initiated, but gave his life to it, and if without him it wouldn't have happened, therefore it's called David's house. As similar to the first agent, came up with the name, Levi for the real estate deal, Leah for the shidduch, right? If you didn't know about Levi and you didn't know about Leah and they didn't come from anywhere else, then there's a finder's fee. The second person did the bulk of the work. Fine. Not taking it away from them. Absolutely. But yet, there is the initiator who deserves the finder's fee. In Moshe's case, it's very different. How's it different? I told you the story. Tell me how it's different, please.
Okay.
Anybody? How's it different? Did Joseph make Moshe Rabbeinu swear that he should take out his remains and bring it to the Holy Land? No.
No, his children,
To his siblings, to his brothers,
brothers.
and to the entire Jewish people, and through that, the entire Jewish people. So who was aware and who was obliged? The entirety of the Jewish people. If Moshe Rabbeinu would not have initiated to exhume the coffin of Yosef HaTzadik and bring him out from Egypt with the Exodus, would it have been done? For sure it would have been done by someone else or a group of others. So therefore, he's like the initiator of the shidduch, who suggests something that is already this person's widely known and has been suggested and will be suggested by others. Talmud in Saita says, if Moshe had not transported him, would Jews not have transported him? Does the verse not state that the bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel brought out of Egypt, they buried in Shechem? They said, leave him. It is more honorable for him to be handled by an extraordinary person than an ordinary person. So yes, Moshe is the one who dealt with it. Absolutely. Because it was giving proper honor to a holy person, Yosef HaTzadik, who was there. His father was buried in Israel as he made his son Yosef promise that he should be buried there. But Yosef stayed there in exile with the Jewish people through 210 years of great challenges, to be there for them. The Jews knew that. They always were aware of his presence. Of course, they would have taken him. Maishiv felt that, okay, the holy righteous person, he should be the one to take care of. He did it. But in conclusion, it's not attributed to him because it would have been done. And in the end, he's not the one who buried him in the Holy Land. That's why the Torah encourages us over here that we complete a mitzvah once we begin it. Once we begin the mitzvah, it becomes a sacred task, a sacred obligation that we shouldn't drop the ball because we've been given something that we need to complete it in its entirety. Not that Moshe Rabbeinu is to blame. God didn't allow him to go into the Holy Land, right? So it's not about a blame over here. So that's very important. You know, we Western culture gives us the mindset that, you know, it's like, whose fault is it? You know, who's right? Who's wrong? Whose fault? Who's not at fault? Right? It's not about fault. It's about a mission that we've been given, a task that we've been given, that we recognize that this is a godly one, and therefore do the best that we can. Of course, there's extenuating circumstances. Sometimes you can't, and you need to pass it on. And that's the right thing to pass it on, as Moshe Rabbeinu did in his instance. But in the end, it becomes the Jewish people's merit. And for Moshe Rabbeinu, that was perhaps just the same. You know, being the shepherd of the Jewish people and being there for the Jewish people, for him was, perhaps we could say, just the same. But what does this mean for me and you? What does this mean? You know, there are times that we have a task in life and we didn't realize what we took upon ourselves, and we feel that, ooh, this is a great burden. It's too much. How am I going to complete this? How am I going to do this? How am I capable of this? I must admit that this is a beautiful sikha that is so apropos. Today's Rambam took almost 2 hours. Very long and difficult. And I didn't have the sufficient time to prepare it. My part that I prepared partially, not the way I liked it to prepare. So I've taken on a mitzvah. I have to see it to its completion. And preparing properly, and teaching it properly, engaging people properly, and at sometimes it feels like, ooh, it's a little too much. Maybe I bit off a little more than I should have. And sometimes we feel that when we do something good. And the natural inclination is, out of our self-love and desire to find the easy road, the easier tasks. So, okay, I'll pass the baton on. I'll pass on this to someone else. And, what is the Torah telling us? You start something, it's a good thing, see it through. So this is for me like a very, not so much that I had the question about not seeing it through, but learning Rambam daily and teaching. But on the day that it was for me the most difficult day to learn and to teach, after Shabbos is difficult because I can prepare for tomorrow tonight, but after Shabbos when it ends so late, and I only finish teaching right as Shabbos ends yesterday's class, because I give it in Chabad Zichron for a few people that come to shul. So I'm only finishing yesterday's, and then it's after Shabbos, and after Shabbos, start now preparing for the next day at a late hour. It's not so easy, not so simple. And today didn't have a moment to prepare properly beforehand. But what is the message here? The Rebbe is giving a clear message. You start something good, we gotta give it our all and see it through. So likewise, we all have started something, whether it's learning Rambam, 3 chapters a day. It's tough, tough to stay focused. It's tough to absorb the so much information. It is. For me, it's tough. I can imagine for you, and I'm familiar with this stuff, probably a little more, learning it probably longer. Maybe, perhaps I know it a little better, and it's still tough to be completely, totally engaged. Can't drop the ball. Got to see it through. That's the message. That's my message. So we all have a message that we have started something. Some of you have started with me actually learning Rambam every day. You got to see it through. Yeah, it's a challenge. But if we've taken it on, let's make it happen. And if it's not the Rambam, it's something else, whether it's Tanya every day, whether it's journaling in Tanya, right? Whether it's journaling in Tanya, or whatever good things, if it's for the community, if it's our learning, if it's for the family, if some mitzvah, kol ha-mitzvah asher anechi mitzavcha, the whole of the mitzvah, from beginning, middle to end, be completely given over. And when we know that it's God commanding you today, right? If you sense that it's new and it's fresh and it's a new connection, then that will give us the wherewithal that we can see it through. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts?
Incredible.
Your father's incredible. He's always the first one on and eager and focused. He's an inspiration.
Awesome.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
I'm sure he appreciates you and your sons and it's keeping him going.
Baruch Hashem, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. All right. Okay, folks, thank you. We will continue.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Be well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good night, everybody. Be well. Thank you.